The whole day I wandered about as if sleepwalking. Now and then Tibby and Yossi would throw me a brotherly word. The capo, too, tried to reassure me. He had given me easier work today. I felt sick at heart. How well they were treating me, like an orphan. I thought, even now, my father is still helping me. I did not know myself what I wanted, for the day to pass quickly or not. I was afraid of finding myself alone that night. How good it would be to die here. At last we began the return journey. How I longed for orders to run. The military march, the gate, the camp. I ran to Block 36. Were there still miracles on this earth? He was alive. He had escaped the second selection. He had been able to prove that he was still useful. I gave him back his knife and spoon. A Kibo drummer left us, a victim of the selection. Lately he had wandered among us, his eyes glazed, telling everyone of his weakness. I can't go on. It's all over. It was impossible to raise his morale. He didn't listen to what we told him. He could only repeat that all was over for him, that he could no longer keep up the struggle, that he had no strength left nor faith. Suddenly his eyes would become blank, nothing but two open wounds, two pits of terror. He was not the only one to lose his faith during those selection days. I knew a rabbi from a little town in Poland, a bent old man whose lips were always trembling. He used to pray all the time in the block, in the yard, in the ranks. He would recite whole pages of the Talmud from memory, argue with himself, ask himself questions, and answer himself. And one day he said to me, "It's the end. God is no longer with us." And as though he had repented of having spoken such words so clipped, so cold, he added in his faint voice, "I know. One has no right to say things like that, I know. Man is too small, too humble, and inconsiderable to seek to understand the mysterious ways of God. But what can I do? I'm not a sage, one of the elect, nor a saint. I'm just an ordinary creature of flesh and blood. I've got eyes too, and I can see what they're doing here. Where's the divine mercy? Where's God? How can I believe? How could anyone believe in this merciful God?" Poor Akiba drummer. If he could have gone on believing in God, if he could have seen a proof of God in this Calvary, he would not have been taken by the selection. But as soon as he felt the first cracks forming in his faith, he had lost his reason for struggling and had begun to die. When the selection came, he was condemned in advance, offering his own neck to the executioner. All he asked of us was, "In 3 days I shall no longer be here. Say the Kaddish for me." We promised him. In 3 days' time, when we saw the smoke rising from the chimney, we would think of him. 10 of us would gather together and hold a special service. All his friends would say the Kaddish. Then he went off toward the hospital, his steps steadier, not looking back. An ambulance was waiting to take him to Birkenau. These were terrible days. We received more blows than food. We were crushed with work. And 3 days after he had gone, we forgot to say the Kaddish. Winter had come. The days were short and the nights had become almost unbearable. In the first hours of dawn, the icy wind cut us like a whip. We were given winter clothes, slightly thicker striped shirts. The veterans found in this a new source of derision. "Now you're really be getting a taste of the camp." We left for work as usual, our bodies frozen. The stones were so cold that it seemed as though our hands would be glued to them if we touched them. But you get used to anything. On Christmas and New Year's Day, there was no work. We were allowed a slightly thicker soup. Toward the middle of January, my right foot began to swell because of the cold. I was unable to put it on the ground. I went to have it examined. The doctor, a great Jewish doctor, a prisoner like ourselves, was quite definite. I must have an operation. If we waited, the toes, and perhaps the whole leg, would have to be amputated. This was the last straw, but I had no choice. The doctor had decided on the operation and there was no discussing it. I was even glad that it was he who had made the decision. They put me into a bed with white sheets. I had forgotten that people slept in sheets. The hospital was not bad at all. We were given good bread and thicker soup. No more bell, no more roll call, no more work. Now and then I was able to send a bit of bread to my father. Near me lay a Hungarian Jew who had been struck down with dysentery, skin and bone with dead eyes. I could only hear his voice. It was the sole indication that he was alive. Where did he get the strength to talk? You mustn't rejoice too soon, my boy. There's selection here, too, more often than outside. Germany doesn't need sick Jews. Germany doesn't need me. When the next transport comes, you'll have a new neighbor. So listen to me and take my advice. Get out of the hospital before the next selection. Those words, which came from under the ground, from a faceless shape, filled me with terror. It was indeed true that the hospital was very small, and that if new invalids arrived in the next few days, room would have to be found for them. But perhaps my faceless neighbor, fearing that he would be among the first victims, simply wanted to drive me away, to free my bed in order to give himself a chance to survive. Perhaps he just wanted to frighten me. Yet, what if he were telling the truth? I decided to await events. The doctor came to tell me that the operation would be the next day. Don't be afraid, he added. Everything will be all right. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they took me into the operating room. My doctor was there. I took comfort from this. I felt that nothing serious could happen while he was there. There was balm in every word he spoke, and every glance he gave me held a message of hope. It will hurt you a bit, he said, but that will pass. Grit your teeth. The operation lasted an hour. They had not put me to sleep. I kept my eyes fixed upon my doctor. Then I felt myself go under. When I came round, opening my eyes, I could see nothing at first but a great whiteness, my sheets. Then I noticed the face of my doctor bending over me. Everything went off well. You're brave, my boy. Now you're going to stay here for 2 weeks. Rest comfortably, and it will be over. You'll eat well and relax your body and your nerves. I could only follow the movements of his lips. I scarcely understood what he was saying, but the murmur of his voice did me good. Suddenly, a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I could not feel my leg. Had they amputated it? Doctor, I stammered. Doctor, what's the matter, son? I lacked the courage to ask him the question. Doctor, I'm thirsty. He had water brought to me. He was smiling. He was getting ready to go and visit the other patients. Doctor? What? Shall I still be able to use my leg? He was no longer smiling. I was very frightened. He said, Do you trust me, my boy? I trust you absolutely, doctor. Well, then listen to me. You'll be completely recovered in a fortnight. You'll be able to walk like anyone else. The sole of your foot was all full of pus. We just had to open the swelling. You haven't had your leg amputated. You'll see. In a fortnight's time, you'll be walking about like everyone else. I had only a fortnight to wait. 2 days after my operation, there was a rumor going around the camp that the front had suddenly drawn nearer. The Red Army, they said, was advancing on Buna. It was only a matter of hours now. We were already accustomed to rumors of this kind. It was not the first time a false prophet had foretold to us peace on earth, negotiations with the Red Cross for a release, or other false rumors. And then, and often, we believed them. It was an injection of morphine.